Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It's your boy Ghost Bunny X, and I'm back here with a new crossover boxing, influencer boxing video. We have a lot to cover today, so let's just get right into the card that's going to be on March 4th this week. We have Jay Swingler versus NICHLMAO. And when this card was announced, people were very upset with the main event not being Jay Swingler versus someone like King Kenny. We got a lot of videos out there, and I showed some up on the screen just now. Stuff like the FP Media posted a video called "This Card is Bad. The Misfits Boxing 005 card is not good." We had Anisan Gibb mocking Jay Swingler's next fight against NICHLMAO. Gibb has gone on to bigger things, fighting Jake Paul, Taylor Holder, Austin McBroom. And Swingler, his first fight was against Churdleys, and that was his first professional fight since his amateur bout against Gibb. Now, we did have, as all Misfits cards do, pullouts of the fights. Originally, we had Waleed Sharks versus NNA Productions, but NNA had to pull out of the fight due to his visa not being approved in the UK. Waleed Sharks reportedly has a new opponent, and his name is A Pape, I think. A-P-A-P-E. We do have some footage of him hitting the bag, and to be quite honest, he looks like he's packing some power in those punches. Now, he does look a lot bigger than Waleed. I don't know how that's going to affect anything, but this is looking to be a very good fight. Now, let's go over the entire card as it is right now. Of course, we have the main event, Jay Swingler versus NICHLMAO, but we also have the undercard fight, which a lot of people had problems with, given that the 004 Misfits had KSI versus Temper, Slim Albahar versus Tom Zanetti, Salt Poppy versus Josh Bruckner. Then we also had the mystery opponent versus B-Dave, and the mystery opponent obviously was Luis Pineda. We had Ryan Taylor versus Swarms, and we had a great fight in Anthony Taylor versus I Just Virgo, which was awesome. And we had a Faith Ordway versus Elle Brook bout that actually a lot of people thought was going to go a different way, but it was a good fight overall. Now, obviously, with a card as stacked as this, you're going to want to keep the momentum going, and that's why people had such a big problem with this new card, especially with people like King Kenny fighting Ashley Raksu, who was put down in 3 seconds against Anthony Taylor in his last bout. People think Kenny needs to start upping the competition, and they agree with Swingler. And I think that King Kenny versus Swingler may be the fight to do next if King Kenny and Swingler can both pull off wins, which I do believe they will. We also have Dean the Great fighting Pulley Arif, which I don't know too much about. It's safe to say that Dean the Great's gonna retain his championship under Misfits. We have Astrid Wet versus AJ Bunker. We have the Queen of Misfits, as they are calling her, returning to the ring against AJ Bunker, who we saw actually fight Elle Brook and did not look that great. Very sloppy. So hoping that we get a little bit more technique from her, and I'm hoping we get a little more power punches from Astrid Wet. As the Keeley fight, it was a lot of just like pushing with your fist. Yeah. Next we have Ginty versus Halal Ham. Now this is a little weird matchup. I think Halal Ham's about 5'8". Ginty I know is at least 6 foot. Looking at him next to JMX in his last fight, he survived pretty well. He did get knocked out in pretty brutal fashion, as well as the towel being thrown in, but I think this will be a decent matchup given their skill sets. The height disadvantage is what I'm really worried about here. All right, next we have Tempo Arts versus Godson. Now these two I believe are smaller creators, but that is something that I really do love to see in the influencer crossover space. I have seen clips of them training, very, very short clips obviously, but they both look like they are ready to rumble, and I honestly can't wait for that fight. So that is the entire card. It seems that it's not a terrible card, but at the same time we got to look at it as these are like the UFC events that you don't pay-per-view. Do you know what I mean? Because with DAZN and this kind of Misfits card, you don't have to pay an extra pay-per-view like you did for KSI versus Temper. As long as you have your subscription on DAZN, you can watch all the fights on the card. Moving on, we had a media workout today. A lot of them are looking mostly how we kind of expected them to look. We had Salt Poppy on the pads with Halal Ham as he trains with him as well. We have a clip of Ginty getting in some hits on the pad. We got Waleed. We had clips of AJ. We had clips of Asher Wet, but you know, we already had clips of them training in this video, so I didn't want to just overkill with people already. Now, the one matchup that we have not talked about that is going to be on Misfits 005 March 4th is the fight of the night that could go either good or bad. We have B-Dave on a tag team with the man who beat him, Luis Alcaraz Pineda, versus Ice Poseidon and Anthony Vargas. Now, I haven't heard a lot about Anthony Vargas. I know Ice Poseidon fought on the Misfits card with Dean versus Waleed. He didn't look that great. Brandon Buckingham kind of put him out very quickly in very brutal fashion, but I am honestly excited to see how this goes. Misfits, I believe, handled the mystery opponent very, very, very well with KSI versus Temper card, but this is something we've never seen before. Tag team matches are usually only we see in wrestling. Now we're bringing it to a sport that is straight punching and maybe a little difficult to do, but Los Pineda Coladas versus D-Generation Ice tag team match in boxing March 4th on DAZN. I cannot wait. It looks like we do have an update on the Waleed Sharks fight as NNA pulled out. It was reported by DAZN that we were going to have a Pape fight Waleed Sharks, but as I said before, he just looks way too big. There's a very big weight difference. Now we have a new opponent card update. This was actually updated 6 hours ago. Waleed Sharks versus Ace Musa. I've never heard of Ace Musa before. He's got 48.7K on Instagram, 11K plus subs on YouTube, and 1.2 million plus on TikTok. Now, that is a pretty good resume. I guess you would consider this guy a smaller creator, but he is putting his name out there against a pretty big name in the influencer boxing space in Waleed Sharks. So we'll see how this goes. Ace actually got a knockout in his last fight over a guy who looks like Ginty. I'll show you guys a clip of that real quick. So I think this would also be an interesting fight. Pape looked like way too big of a fighter to be fighting. This looks like a little bit better of a matchup. So excited to see that. Let's go over what we experienced in this past week. We had a Jake Paul loss to Tommy Fury. Who would have thought? I didn't personally. I thought Jake Paul was going to get the knockout very, very, very quickly, but as you can see, that is not the case. We did have a clip of Jake Paul talking to Deji in the locker room after the fight. It's a very wholesome moment seeing two guys who fought each other. Didn't really have a lot of for each other, kind of just talk it out. Deji's been here before. He's got 4 losses on his record. This is Jake Paul's first loss. ICB ranking him 7-1 as they count the amateur fight. They have asked whether they should put KSI at number 1 because of Jake's loss, but just don't think that's realistic. You guys will see why in my next video. Anyway, I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. Super excited for this card. I'm going to give my thoughts on Instagram during the fights and probably do a review of the fights. After the fact, I did want to give you guys my predictions for the fights before I go. We'll start at the undercards. Tempo Arts versus Godson. I honestly, from the footage, the short amount of footage that I've seen, I have to go with Tempo Arts in this one. I think it may be a TKO or possibly a decision. Ginty versus Halal Ham. I honestly have to give this one to Halal Ham. He looks slightly better. I think in the ring, he starts to just lose all his training and just starts throwing punches left and right. I think this could result into a decision win for Halal Ham like his last fight, but it could go either way. Ginty could pull out a win. I think Ginty could be working on power punches that could very much put out Halal Ham, but we'll just have to see. Astrid Wet versus AJ Bunker. And I forgot to mention that this is the Misfits Flyweight Championship, the first female champion in Misfits history. I am very excited for this fight. I hope it is a lot better fight than Astrid Wet versus Keely, but we will just have to see. I have to give this one to Astrid Wet. Astrid Wet is nowhere near as good as Elle Brooke, but AJ Bunker's last performance was just so horrendous that I think that Astrid Wet could pull off this win very easily. Next, we have Waleed Sharks versus Ace Musa. I honestly don't know a lot about Ace Musa. I'd have to go with Waleed just from previous fights and just how he looks overall. Being an 18-year-old boxing prospect like this is just unbelievable, and I think this is going to be an easy win for Waleed, just like I thought the easy win would be against NNA Productions. Now we have the rival of Waleed Sharks, Dean the Great, versus Pulley Arif, and we are getting a Misfits Lightweight Championship as Dean is trying to protect the belt as his. I do think Dean will come out with a win. Pulley does look decent on the pads, but we'll just have to see what he looks like in the ring. Hopefully the moment doesn't get to him, but we'll just have to see come fight night. King Kenny versus Ashley Raksu. Ashley looks absolutely ripped in the sparring footage and training footage that he has put out. Kenny's looking good as usual. I've never been that big of a King Kenny fan, but at this point, I do believe King Kenny can pull off the win, whether it's a knockout or a decision, but I do think he has more to prove to everybody else, and I think he will be going for that knockout against Ashley Raksu. Now, finally, we have the main event of the evening, Jay Swingler versus Nick LMAO. I am going to have to go with Jay Swingler on this one. Huge Jay Swingler fan, and just by his technique, his style, how much he's improved throughout the years, I just believe that this could be an easy win for Jay. Now, I've seen Nick spar against Jarvis, and he did look good, but this is first time boxing on a card. He is the main event. And this is going to be in Jay Swingler's hometown of Telford, England. So what does that say? I don't know. I think it just says that you guys got to watch the fights and see how this all goes down.